Hi, welcome. This is a webinar by Hannah Parks. I'm a University of Worcester student in my third year of my Physical Education and Sports Studies degree, and I'm here to talk about my experiences with children with global developmental delay. So this is just a quick overview of my journey at Worcester. I'm working with children with disabilities and special educational needs. And so I started coaching a few years ago, and on work experience, I met a few individuals with autistic, on the autistic spectrum, and with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And so that got me working with young individuals and getting to know how to include them within physical activity. And then when I came to Worcester in 2013, I chose to take up an opportunity working with young individuals with hearing impairments at a once-a-month deaf club, and I was a sports coach for them. I got involved, learnt a few basic sign language, and just basically got to know them and who they are. And it was a really good experience for me within working with young individuals to include them. And then I did a few courses at Worcester, mainly looking at the deaf awareness course, and also getting to look at how to include young individuals with disabilities in sport. So I think it's a Sports UK course. And then a few years ago I did a school trip at a primary school, and I met the girl with global developmental delay. That was my first time that I met her. And then it was from meeting her that I sort of wanted to look at it closer and look at what it is exactly, because it was an impairment that I didn't know about, so it was something that I wanted to get to know and sort of look into a bit more detail. And so my second year at Worcester, so last year, I did a module teaching special educational needs and disability PE in schools, and that had a placement involved, and that's when I went into the school, the primary school, and met the girl again and focused on what she could do in PE lessons and what she could do as a whole in sport. So from meeting the young girl with global developmental delay in the first instant when I went on the school trip, I wanted to find out the background knowledge to global developmental delay, because it was something that I'd not seen before or heard about. So I went and looked online and just had a look at what the medical symptoms were, and it came across that it was to do with the developmental milestones within children, so if they could sit, if they could crawl, if they could talk, and it was looking at children who miss out those milestones when they develop. And global developmental delay is different to this, is it's when they miss out 2 or 3 or several of the key areas within development. So it might be that they go from sitting and then go straight to walking, and they completely miss out the rolling, the crawling, and it's that developing those fine skills that we have as adults that they don't have, because they miss out learning how to do the small little things. They just go from being unable to do anything to being able to do gross motor skills. And so sometimes it can be that they miss out how to walk or talk, or it could be to do with how they interact with their peers. So they might not know how to interact with their environment or talk with individuals. It might be their social emotional skills are also missed out when they're developing. And it might be that some children might not catch up with their age-related parts, or it might be that they stay behind what you would call they are developmental behind, so they're not with the correct stage of development for their age. So looking at, or meeting this young girl, I went and had a look at the biological causes. So really, what is it that medical professionals would say cause global developmental delay? And a huge thing that came up was the genetic abnormalities in the DNA structures. So looking at the X and Y chromosomes within young individuals, and the abnormalities within those structures then cause the physiological differences and cause the developmental delay that can impact different areas of the children's lives. And it can stem from loads of different things within development. So it could be the development of the brain and the spinal cord, so the structures within those 2 key tissues can then go on to cause the physiological difficulty for individuals to be able to control their limbs within their physical activity and in their movement. It can also happen either within the fetus or when the child's growing within the womb. It can be caused when it's an abnormality within their development. or can cause later on in the childhood's development. So when they are maybe a younger age, sort of 2 or 3, it could be that they get a childhood infection sort of similar to meningitis, and it's from that that the infection causes an abnormality within their genes or the genetic structures, which then again causes the physiological sort of difficulties within moving the limbs. But one thing that did come about causes is something that can actually be prevented, which is fetal alcohol syndrome. So if an adult, when they are pregnant or when a woman is pregnant, they are consuming a lot of alcohol, this can then induce the fetal alcohol syndrome, and as a consequence can actually cause the abnormalities within the genes. So then that could be something that it's important that women don't drink whilst they are pregnant, so it then doesn't cause the abnormalities for the child, and then it can have a long impact on their lifestyles. But another thing that came about is that the causes for global developmental delay are so broad that it sometimes can't be identified as to within certain individuals that specifically this causes their global developmental delay, or in this case this caused it. It's because there's so many factors, it is hard for the medical professions to sort of pinpoint what it is that caused the genetic abnormalities within a young individual. However, those parents who are prone to having sort of abnormalities or have sort of global developmental delay within their sort of ancestry and within their background, they can be screened. When a woman is pregnant, she can be genetically screened to see if the child have a higher risk of having global developmental delay or being born with it, and then they can take the necessary measures in place to make sure that the child has the best possible upbringing. So all children are assessed regularly throughout their development. So whether as a child they look at whether children are crawling or whether they're walking through the early stages of their development. And so it is if whoever is watching them or observing them, if they see that key developmental milestones are missed, or if or several of them are missed, then they are often sort of given additional support, or they are sent to or referred to a specialist who can then offer them the support they need to catch up with their sort of their age developmental peers, or if they can just keep them on track to being able to develop sufficiently. And then in schools, children who are diagnosed may require additional support, so they may need one-to-one support, or they may need speech and language therapists to help them develop at the stage for them within the condition. So from looking at my background and looking at the background of global developmental delay and meeting this young girl on the school trip, I wanted to go back to the primary school for the placement within the special educational needs module that I did last year, and specifically wanted to look at how she was in a PE lesson, so looking at her fundamental movement skills, looking at how she interacted with the peers in the lessons, looking at how she was able to write and talk. So it was quite interesting. So for this young girl, it was evident that on a school trip she was unable to walk long distances, and she was unable to walk down the stairs. When I was talking to the teacher and talking to the young girl, she sort of came apparent that she had actually missed the stages within crawling and rolling within her development. So she went straight from sitting to walking. So she wasn't able to develop those muscles within her legs to be able to walk for a long period of time, and so now it's still impacting her movement now as she's in year 5. And then also watching her in a netball lesson, she was unable to catch and throw the ball, and when observing and sort of looking at her against her peers, they were able to have their hands in the correct position and be able to catch the ball quite sufficiently, whereas she tended to shy away from the ball, sort of put her arms up against it, so sort of hiding it. She was sort of ducking, trying to miss the ball, and even when she did catch it, it wasn't a proficient catch for her age. and the teacher had to add in what you would call an inclusion measure, so she had to make the task easier for her by giving her an additional aid to sort of catch the ball with, and even then she still struggled to catch the smaller objects that the children were sort of trying to pass to her. It was clear that she had many friends within the class, as her speech was, for her age, her speech was quite fairly proficient, as it was mainly her motor skills and her fine and gross motor skills that were impacted from the global developmental delay. And also on placement, I managed to observe her swimming as well. And even though she couldn't control her limbs to actually swim the strokes, the teacher put in some aids for her to learn how to continue to walk in the water in the shallow end. She had the confidence to go underwater and collect objects, and for her that was a massive we saw a massive improvement and success, because she's unable to grasp these objects within land. In the water she had a lot more, she could easily grasp the object, she could easily move around. So for her it developed her confidence, and from her facial expressions she seemed to really enjoy being in the water. And then also watching her in PE, I also got the opportunity to have a look at her in English and maths lessons, so looking at whether she was able to read and write, if she was able to sort of interact with the lessons. And it was evident that within her fine motor skills she was unable to hold a pencil or a pen, so she was unable to actually write out sort of proficiently for her age. So it was quite interesting to see that something that so small with a genetic abnormality could have a huge impact on different areas of both PE and English and maths.